world is full of stories. Stories of mysteries, of curiosities, of oddities. Join Pat and Jethro Gilligan-Toth for the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected, as they lift the lid and cautiously peer inside the Box of Oddities.
This is a thing.
Yeah. How do we get here? We want to thank Zanies, first of all. What a great place to do our first show. Zanies. It's amazing. They've been so good to us, too. They put us up in their, they have a condo, and they put us up in the condo. So many famous people have played in this club. I may or may not have pooped on the same toilet as Rob Schneider. So I got that going for me.
One thing not at the condo is a hairdryer. So, thank you. No, I feel good about myself right now.
We feel good being here. It was 2 degrees in Bangor, Maine when we flew out. 2 degrees. So we got here, yeah. When we got here, it was like, oh my God, immediately it was so much nicer. It was like 75 or something. And,
yeah, it's weird though, because we're from Maine. Not everyone everywhere else wants to talk to you. And so that's something I've discovered. I'm all like, hey, how's it going? And people just keep walking. They're like, who are you? Why are you speaking to me? I'm like, I don't know if you're in Maine.
She created an incident at the airport. It was a little embarrassing.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I have all these bags, which originally the plane was one, and so I'm going down the escalator and it's awkward because bags, and one's going the wrong direction. It was a whole thing, and so I was like, okay, so I got it arranged right, and I was like, okay, and our friend Amber, who's here with us tonight, Amber was like, good job. And so I'm looking at my bag and I said, thank you. And then the man behind me went, you're welcome.
Then we got into a really nice Uber. They don't have Ubers like that in Maine. They have farm machinery. They pick you up with farm machinery in Maine. It's like, Mr. Toth, your Massey Ferguson wheat combine is waiting for you.
That's not a hay bale for sitting.
No.
That's a hay bale for eating.
No. We really appreciate you guys coming out. Some people came from a long way. I was reading on social media, somebody drove 10 hours to get here.
What up,
Oh my God, 10 hours. Where did you drive from?
Texas.
From East Texas.
Awesome. Nice. I've heard they have a thing called Buc-ee's in Texas, and you can get
Wasabi peas?
I was talking about like the beaver bites or something.
Beaver nuggets.
Oh, beaver nuggets. That sounds horrible.
And really filthy too when you think about it.
You don't want that?
Yeah. We understand that maybe some of you don't listen to the podcast. You're just here with friends, and that's great. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. You have no fucking idea what you're in for.
Sometimes it's not great.
Yeah. But be kind to each other, and that's the only thing that we ask is that we try to create an accepting crowd. You guys are like family to us, and so just treat everybody with respect.
Don't make us bring out the spray bottle of shame.
Yeah, because we will use it. Believe me.
You don't want it.
No, and I may have brought the one with cow urine. So. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to talk about some really awful stuff right now, and then Kat's going to talk about some really awful stuff. So that's how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
So prepare yourself. I think so.
All right,
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. We decided that what we would do is focus on stories that are local to this area. So we're probably going to offend some people. Hey, don't make us bring out the spray bottle.
Spray bottle.
This is a story that it's really dark. Just get that out of the way.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, this is really dark.
I
What?
shaved.
Did you shave? So you're getting some tonight? Sorry. And then now I'm going to lead into a story about funeral homes. So, all right. This took place in 1989, not far from here, about maybe 30 miles up I-24 in Springfield, Milldale, near Springfield. There's a funeral director.
Nice place.
In 1989. His name was Bobby Wilkes. Anybody know this story? You do?
Sounded so hesitant. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Could it get more awkward? Okay. So here's the deal. He owned a place called Barber's Funeral Home in Milldale, and he was caught committing several. Well, he said a set of crimes, but it was a big set of crimes. Some of it was really.
I'm sorry, is that how crimes are arranged?
Yeah.
In sets?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a
please
set.
continue. No,
A
it's
set.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
There's a gift set of crimes for the holiday season, which is nice.
Comes with a complimentary shot glass.
It does. So what he would do, this is the thing, he would sell people burial vaults, and then he would tell the families, you really don't want us you don't want to see us lowering your loved ones in the ground. So he would send them all away, and then he'd take the coffin out and reuse the vault, and then just bury them without the concrete vault.
That's yucky.
Yeah. I can't imagine that, being a grieving family member and.
You should just go.
Yeah, you be here.
You don't need to see this part.
But he would sell it over and over and over again.
What if you're like a repeat mourner, though? So wouldn't you be like,
They have a
this
special.
is where
They have a punch
Greta
card
was?
for that.
No?
A repeat mourner. So if you were lucky, you got buried without a vault. It got much worse than that. At this point, it was just considered grand larceny. That's all it was. But it became much more. It became, let me see what, uninhibited desecration of a corpse.
The uninhibited part is really what gets you. What's that entail?
Yeah. So what he did on occasion is not only would he not use the concrete vault, but sometimes he wouldn't even use the coffin.
Oh,
He was like-
reuse that as well?
I think that speculation is that's what it was. They were just,
Sure.
taking grandma out, tossing her in, and reselling a gently used casket. Wow. Which again, what a feeling of betrayal that must have been.
Yeah, that's not fun for anyone,
So-
especially grandma.
So we're gonna start with this guy. Yeah. Just piled in there. Yeah. We're gonna start with this guy, but then we're gonna branch out and explore a couple of different mishaps at funeral homes. I'm calling this segment Undertakers Gone Wild.
It's a set of awful.
Yes, yeah. So his coworkers, Bobby Wilkes' coworkers, for a while they were getting really suspicious of his behavior. One of the guys that worked for him said he ran a quote, a shotgun happy-go-lucky mortuary, which I don't think is exactly the positioning statement, that you want for something like that. Yeah. Would they garner your business?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, the right signage.
So his coworker, Bobby Wilkes' coworker, once saw Wilkes move a body. It was raining outside. He didn't want to use the hearse, so he moved a body in his Volkswagen bus.
Yeah, that feels right to me.
Does it? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Well, things went pretty smoothly for a while. He got away with this for quite a while. But then a guy named Donald Flatt became suspicious, and he hid behind a church after Bobby Wilkes told him, you don't want to watch us lower your
Right.
ground.
Donnie Flatt don't put up with no business.
No, he don't.
He knows what's up.
He does. So he hid behind an adjacent church, and he saw Wilkes burying his loved one without the vault that his family had paid for. And so he was perplexed, to say the least. So he called.
Perplexed and perturbed?
Yep.
Perturbed?
Several other words that start
Perturbed?
with P's. So he calls the police, and they found the guy who was buried. His last name was Piff, and they found that the coffin was buried without a vault. Piff's casket was filled with garbage. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. There were rotten apple cores in the coffin, vacuum cleaner bags, and coffee grounds, and eggshells.
Oh, it sounds like compost.
Maybe he was just like a forward-thinking funeral home guy.
Maybe.
Let's just compost these guys. I gotta get my tomatoes in.
When I was a kid, my grandmother had a bumper sticker that said "Compost happens."
Yeah.
She was funny, but subtle.
Yeah. So after they discovered the first trash-filled casket, Flatt had his mother exhumed, and her coffin was dumped in sideways and had broken open, and her body parts from the autopsy had spilled out into the
Oh no!
Yeah. He didn't think that was appropriate.
No.
So.
Oh, that's rough.
But it was very, very good. This guy Wilkes was good at convincing people that it was best for them to not see what was gonna happen.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, and it's because of that he got away with it for quite a while. Sometimes though he didn't even use a coffin. They dug up one person that was just wrapped in cardboard.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah, they buried some guy in a piece of a refrigerator box. Just wrapped him up.
Not even corrugated?
No. Not even corrugated.
That's upsetting.
Yeah. So they dug up a number of different over the summer of that year. I think 30 exhumations took place. Police discovered that the corpse of a guy named Joseph Roth had been simply wrapped in a used carpet remnant, and
Just
tossed
like
in,
whatever he could find.
whatever he could find.
Roll
Yeah.
them in.
Yeah, and he, in most cases, would just throw garbage in, not just in the coffin, but in the hole as well.
That's so awful. Okay.
Yeah. So apple cores and just whatever he had lying around,
Sure.
I guess, and he just threw them in. And so anyway, they dug up this one lady, and her coffin was full of empty soft drink bottles.
Not even recycling.
No. And they said, my mother's not a garbage disposal. She said, I could have him killed if I wanted to, and believe me, I want to. So 30 bodies were exhumed over the summer. And the sad thing is, the majority of the victims had known Bobby Wilkes since they were kids, because he grew up in that area and had lived there his entire life. And so they didn't really know how to deal with that.
Sure.
How do you deal with that? He settled in Sumner County.
I really can think of a few people that I went to high school with that I would I would just not plan my funeral with them.
No.
Like, I know them well enough to be like, okay, someone else.
Not
That's
you.
not gonna work for me.
Yeah. The brother of the guy who caught Bobby Wilkes, Bobby Flatt, told UPI, he said, "I never suspicioned anything," quote. "I trusted Bobby." I never suspicioned anything. Right there, never suspicioned anything. Quote, "I trusted Bobby, we grew up together, I didn't want to find anything wrong." And I think maybe that was what perhaps allowed him to continue as long as he did.
Okay, because people didn't want to believe that he would be doing something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
And people are polite sometimes when they.
Well, I would definitely draw the line long before I got to that point. So they didn't know how to handle this. They didn't know how to handle it. The first thing that happened was that Wilkes was fined $6,000 and they took away his license. That was it.
Wait, like his driver's license?
No,
His mortuary license.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they took away his mortuary license. That's where it started, but then when they started catching people rolled up in cardboard and carpet remnants, things got a little bit worse. He got caught. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of grand larceny for burying bodies without coffins and without the vaults, in many cases, that the families had purchased. But those weren't the only charges. He also pled guilty to 48 counts of burial fraud.
Oh.
48. And for that, he got 28 years and 11 months on top of the time.
Is that for that blatant disregard for human remains?
Yeah.
What was that term?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
That's fine.
yeah. Suspicioned, I think.
No.
So he's in jail, and that's a good thing. Now here's some bad news. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to give him a job, because initially he was pretty well behaved.
Sure.
When he was in there, so they said, this guy,
He obviously knows how to manipulate, get his way.
Yep. So they gave him a job as the head of the children's nursery. That didn't end well.
I have so many questions. So this is the children's nursery at the prison?
Yes, exactly. When parents who would bring their kids during visitations, they would drop them off at the nursery.
Oh, not the baby criminals.
No. They call that a playpen. But they're thinking, this is a good idea. We'll have Bobby keep an eye on them.
Right? Bobby, obviously very good at things.
Yeah. According to
This one's acting up. Where's the carpet remnants?
Yeah. According to Robertson County Assistant District Attorney Dent Morris, during Wilkes' time working in the nursery, he was accused of child molestation and later convicted of 6 counts of child abuse. Yeah.
Shouldn't babies in prisons?
No. It's a bad mix.
God, awful.
But here's some good news.
So
He died in prison. So
Oh, hey!
after serving almost 30 years of his sentence, he died in 2017 at the age of 81 in a hospital that's not far from here, right here in Nashville. Prior to his death, he was serving the remainder of his sentence at the Lois M. Derbury Special Needs Prison Facility.
I have questions.
Go.
So he died in prison, and then they were like, we're going to give you a proper burial? Or...
I wish I'd thought of that. Oh yeah, that would be the ultimate punishment. You know? Hey Bobby, I hope you like eggshells and apple cores. Good God.
be feeding my tomatoes.
Yeah. I guess that when they initially put him in prison, they put him in solitary confinement because, surprise, they thought maybe somebody would want to hurt him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just out and out killing. There has been a good outcome overall. His crimes have made a lasting impact on Tennessee law. According to the County Assistant District Attorney Dent Morris, prior to Wilkes being caught, there wasn't any actual state law about what to do with someone who was violating corpses.
Oh. Okay. So we had some growth
Yep.
that needed to happen, and something just awful had to happen in order for that to spur that movement. Yay!
It worked. Morris explained, in response to the Bobby Wilkes case, the legislator passed a specific statute governing the crimes of abuse of a corpse that stands to this day. So,
Yay!
yeah, so there's
He has
Bobby
a great
Wilkes.
name also, by the way.
Dent Morris. Yeah,
It's a wonderful name.
it is. Yeah, so Bobby Wilkes, he seems nice. But this kind of thing happens way more than it should, or than we know. I mean, it should never happen. But in Tulsa,
Maybe
okay.
never.
Maybe never. Yeah, I'm gonna go with never. Okay. In Tulsa, in April of 2015, Shayna Lauren Sims, who was 28 at the time, gained entry to Moore's East Lawn Funeral Home in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I guess that she had a frenemy. She had this acquaintance that she had known a long time, and she was convinced that this acquaintance had been fooling around with her man. You know this story. Yeah. So.
It's so awful. You guys are so awful.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Okay.
So she's mad because this woman had fooled around with her husband.
Allegedly.
And so the, quote, mistress died of natural causes. I'm not exactly sure what those natural causes were, but she died of natural causes. And she was like 38 or something like that when she passed away. Tabitha Lynch was her name.
Okay.
So the fact that Tabitha was dead wasn't enough for Shayna Lauren Sims. She posed as a makeup artist to gain access to the body at the funeral home. She just walked in and said, yeah, I'm here to make her up. This is right before the funeral. Minutes before the funeral home viewing, Sims made a few alterations to the body. Greg Lee, the funeral director, just major alterations. The funeral director, Greg Lee, said he was shocked to learn the next day that somebody who authorities said was Sims had altered the body in such a way. In all these years I've worked in the funeral industry, I've never seen this happen. He and Chris Penn, the director of Moore's Rosewood Chapel, talked about finding, the body afterwards. What had happened was she got in there with the makeup, and she also brought a box cutter with her. Yeah, and she cut from here on the forehead down to here. She cut off a toe. Cut off her breasts and just sat them like. And then she stole her shoes. They must have been cute. Yep, they found her later with a knife with strands of the victim's hair still in it. Because after she did that, then she decided it'd be a good time to go and burgle the victim's house.
Yeah. She weren't done.
No. She apparently wanted to find a purse that went with those shoes she stole off the cadaver. So she goes there, and that's where they arrest her.
Right. And God, so like her mugshot is this. Hold on. Now everything's just colors and shapes.
Right.
Okay, ready?
That's dead on. That is dead on.
So creepy.
Oh my God.
Like, that is not the face you should have.
Yeah.
It should be like.
Oops.
No.
So she is sentenced to 7 years for first-degree burglary, 5 years for unlawfully removing a body part from a deceased person.
Which is a thing.
Which is a thing. And also knowingly concealing stolen property, 1 year for unauthorized dissection, and 1 year for disrupting or interrupting a funeral, and she was fined $6,500.
Sometimes I learn about things that are laws that I didn't know were laws, like unlawful dissection. I know.
Yep.
That's good to know.
Yep. Excuse me, I've been battling a cold. Okay. The FBI raided Sunset Mesa Funeral Home.
Beverage?
Yeah, I want a beverage.
What would you like?
What do you got?
Some sodas or
Soda?
tea?
No. You got any water?
No.
So they raided the Sunset Mesa Funeral Home establishment in Montrose, Colorado. This was just last February of 2018. Suspicions about the funeral home's practices arose when families said that they had received substances from the crematorium that didn't look like human remains.
So they were supposed to cremate and send back the remains,
Yeah.
and then they were like, "This don't look right."
No.
But this.
Authorities discovered the Sunset Mesa shares a building with an organization that sells human body parts to medical research facilities.
Huh?
That's a dangerous combination.
It does. It seems wrought with issues.
Yep. And so what was happening, the obvious thing, they were harvesting organs, selling them on the black market, and then making up the difference in the urn with cement dust.
Oh.
Yep.
But that smells like cement.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you probably would bank on people not sniffing.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
gonna sniff grandma's ash.
You're right. Thank you, friend.
Oh, goodness, thank you so much. One of the employees alleged that a coworker used the corpse's gold teeth to go to Disneyland. Yeah, took his kids to Disneyland with Uncle Floyd's dentures.
Oh, that's awful.
August of 2018, investigators confirmed that the cremains were partially cement powder, and they closed the place down. No second chance there.
No.
In 1986, 83-year-old Anthony Parisi from I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, I just like rolling my R's. Parisi.
It's fun.
He was from Mount Vernon, New York. He died of natural causes. The family took his body to the funeral home in Mount Vernon. The next day, employees came to prepare the body for a viewing. His head was gone. His head was missing from the coffin.
But the rest of him was still there.
Yeah, the rest of them was there, but the head was gone.
His shoes were still there?
Yeah, she.
Because I have an inkling.
You're just seeing a pattern here.
I'm just saying.
You're watching too much CSI. So what happened was they launched an investigation.
Sure.
Obviously, authorities
Tried to get ahead of the case.
Yep. And they failed. They never located Parisi's head or apprehended any suspects. They don't know what happened to the guy's head. They thought maybe it was a vendetta, a personal vendetta.
Against an old man?
An old man who owned a neighborhood grocery store. They beheaded your neighborhood grocer.
That's really sad.
They said that it appeared as though the perpetrator had removed the head with great precision.
Ooh.
It was just neatly cut away.
See, in my brain parts, what had happened was, so there's a scientist, right? And he has some stuff that he wants to test out, maybe like some Ted Williams style business. But he doesn't have access to a lot of heads. So he was talking with the grocer. He spotted that his skin was a little sallow, and he was like, "All right, so this guy's on his way out. He just kept an eye on him because he had like that special something, right?" So then he was like, "You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep an eye on you. I'm gonna watch the papers, and then when you go, take in your head because you're special to me."
That's probably exactly what happened. So, in 1982, a 19-year-old named Karen Range, this is in 1982, died. Investigators at the time, and again, in 1982, they didn't have like the forensic investigative techniques that they do today, DNA testing, that sort of thing.
Sure.
But the investigators had the foresight to collect and save forensic samples.
Yes, I love that.
You love this
I
stuff.
don't know what to do with this yet, but we might need it someday.
Sometime in the future.
That's glorious police work right there.
It really is. So they saved it, they collected several samples, including semen samples that were found on Karen's body. 25 years later,
Oh my goodness.
in 2008. So you want to take a hydration moment? Okay, great.
I love your story. You're so good.
2008, they decide, hey, you know, things have progressed significantly for DNA sampling. So they ran the tests in 2008, 25 years later, and they got a hit. Yep, they got a hit. It was a direct match to a guy named Kenneth Douglas, a former morgue worker. Yeah. So he got a 3-year sentence for that. He was there at night and he was lonely. And you see, you're connecting the.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. That was post.
It was
post.
posts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in prison. He got 3 years for humping a dead person. And in February of 2009, they thought, you know what? Let's run a few more tests. And they found 2 more with his DNA
Oh no.
matched him.
Yeah, he was just making his way around.
Well, he worked there from 76 to 92. He had a lot of free time on his hands.
That's so upsetting.
Yeah.
That's upsetting.
Yeah. In a 2014 deposition, Douglas admitted he may have had sex with over 100 bodies.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, like, there's so there's layers,
Yeah, there are.
right? Because
Hang on.
you shouldn't have sex with dead people.
No.
I mean, I feel it's just something we should cover. Shouldn't do that. But also, like, they're dead. So, I mean, even some living people, I'm like, ooh, I don't want to sit in your car because, you know,
Yeah.
let alone be inside of you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
And then to add dead into it with all the, because things start to, you know, it's just okay.
Yep.
Just don't.
So in his deposition, when he admitted to having sex with over 100 corpses, he said, "But I was drunk or high on crack at the time." Apparently, he thought the judge would factor that in. Case dismissed. He said, quote, "I would just get on top of them and pull my pants down." It's
Okay.
romantic, isn't it?
That's
Yeah. And his chest beats the heart of a poet. So he was charged and convicted in the 3 cases of gross abuse of a corpse.
Yep, that's accurate.
But those are the only 3 they could prove. You know, a key piece of evidence. He was sued by the family members of the corpses that were abused.
For sure.
As
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can well imagine. A key piece of the evidence was Douglas's own wife, who in her testimony said that she suspected something was going on, and she called the morgue and said, "My husband keeps coming home smelling like sex and alcohol."
Oh, no.
And and she was told, quote, "Whatever happens on county property in
stop
county
that.
time is county business."
No.
I know. The lawsuit said that because Douglas regularly drank and used drugs while on duty, the officials should have known that he could harm corpses.
Listen, I've done a lot of things in my time. I'm not the angel you might think. And there have been some events that left me, let's say, inebriated. Never once did I think, let's fuck a corpse. I'm gonna get me some dead guy.
Yeah. Stop in for a cold one. Anyway, I hope that didn't gross you guys out too much. That's
They're trying to enjoy their chicken wings.
I just, I narrowed this down considerably because there was so much stuff. There was a funeral home, I think it was in Jacksonville, that they were busted because it was just too difficult to embalm the bodies and bury them, so they were stacking them in a closet. And there were like 15 of them in there. Can you imagine that?
No, because I'm thinking, okay, so a closet that you can actually stack bodies in, it's one of those longer ones, so you have the bifold doors.
Sure.
Those bifold doors don't hold anything.
No.
How are you?
I don't know, it makes no sense to me.
It sounds like 70s construction to me. Don't trust it.
It would be interesting to see like a House Hunters International like that. I get the big closet because, I got a bunch of dead guys I gotta stuff. It's like a drinking game with us when we watch House Hunters International. Whenever the wife jokes about how she gets the bigger closet, we take a drink.
As I said, there have been times when I've been inebriated. Big closet.
Anybody here a fan of Richard Cheese? Do you know who Richard Cheese is? Yeah.
Yes, oh, my people.
Yeah, you are our family. Well, Richard Cheese did something special for us here. Let me slide over so I'm not in the way of the screen. I'm coming over this way.
Oh.
This way. Okay, all right.
You were just getting very sauntery?
I'm a saunterer.
I'm
a saunterer from way back. Richard Cheese did something special for us we wanted to share it with you. You want to, David, go ahead and roll that? That'd be great.
Thanks for listening to the Box of Oddities. Now it's time for intermission, so won't you please stretch your legs and have a smoke, buy some snacks and drinks, or use the toilets and wash your hands in those bathroom sinks. However, if you're not attending the live show right now, this doesn't apply to you, and you can pee wherever, we don't care when or how. But nonetheless, the larger point I'm making is just this: it's intermission, and we'll be back as soon as everyone takes a piss.
Show starts in 5 minutes.
And now, the Box of Oddities brings you That Thing in the Middle.
The average human lifespan is about 66 years, or 1/15 millionth of the age of the universe.
But where, as humans, one workday can feel like it's lasted a week, or a week's vacation feels like it went by in the blink of an eye, our perception of time can be a little wonky.
Here are 11 facts that will mess with your perception of time.
Cleopatra lived closer in time to the invention of Snapchat than to the construction of the Great Pyramid at Giza.
Pluto didn't even get to complete one orbit around the sun between the time it was discovered and the time it was declassified as a planet.
Star Wars hit theaters in May 1977. In France, their last execution by guillotine wasn't until September of that year.
Thanks to a boom in population growth following advances in technology and medicine, the current human population living on Earth right now is about 6% of the entire human population in the entire history of the planet.
The Chicago Cubs won the World Series in 2016. Before that, the last time the team won the title was in 1908, which was 12 years before women in the U.S. could vote.
Some small populations of woolly mammoths lived until 1650 BCE, at which point the pyramids had already been around for 1,000 years. The Egyptian Empire was in full swing, while these glorious creatures still roamed the streets.
Oxford is older than the Aztecs. Oxford began teaching in some form all the way back in the year 1096. By most accounts, the Aztecs didn't begin their civilization until the beginning of the 13th century.
The first major wagon train hit the Oregon Trail in 1841. Just 2 years later, Scottish inventor Alexander Bain created a preliminary version of the modern fax machine.
The Eiffel Tower was inaugurated the same year Nintendo was founded. Nintendo started out as a playing card company and was founded the same year the Eiffel Tower was inaugurated for the 1889 World's Fair.
Anne Frank, Martin Luther King Jr., and Barbara Walters were all born in the same year, 1929.
And the time between the Wright brothers' first flight in 1903 and the Apollo 11 moon landing, 1969, was 66 years. That's one Jeff Goldblum.
The Box of Oddities with Kat and Jethro Gilligan Toth.
Man, oh good. They're sweet potato. Oh, you gotta talk.
Okay, that's what that was, I guess.
Yep. I got a question for you. Oh, did you want to say something?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I have a question for you. What you got for me?
All right. Okay, so thank you, by the way, for printing this out for me because I am just impossible to deal with. So, everything's happening and I've got to leave Maine and there's planes and there's things and I needed this. I needed this before I left Maine and we don't have a printer.
No, we don't. We don't have a printer. Well, we had
So
one.
weird.
Somebody hijacked it. You ever have like a wireless printer and then somebody finds out that they can get on it and then they print out penises? Ever had that happen? I hate that.
Yeah, we didn't either. That didn't happen to us. All right, so let's talk about this thing.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if that's gonna work.
No, okay. All right. All right. So about 45 miles northwest of here is a town called Adams. The city was originally incorporated as Red River in 1869, but was renamed Adams Station in honor of James Reuben Adams, which is also a rad name.
People had great names in the past. They really did.
So he owned much of the land in that area, and then they ended up calling it Adams in 1898. So the first settlers of what is now Adams arrived in the late 18th century and early 19th century, and among those settlers was John Bell. John Bell.
Ooh, I know what this is. Go ahead.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Oh, yeah.
So John Bell moved his family from North Carolina. He purchased some land and a large house for his family, and over the next several years he acquired more land, increasing his holdings to 328 acres. Oh, he also cleared a number of fields for planting. He was an elder of the local church, and he and his family were doing pretty well until 1917. That's when he first encounters the Bell Witch. I know, right? Okay. All right. So, all right, this is how it starts. John Bell was out inspecting his crops, as you do when you have crops. You inspect them. You stand with your hands like this. Sometimes you massage your suspenders.
They all wore suspenders. They had great names and they all wore suspenders.
I know. My friend Mandy wears suspenders all the time. Hey!
Nice suspenders.
Mandy wears suspenders all the time, even when we're playing volleyball. It's great.
You don't have enough flair, though, on your suspenders.
Flair. I'll work on that. It's my show.
It's okay. Obscure reference. Never mind.
Oh, I got it.
We're going for that.
You're fine. So he's out inspecting his crops, and he noticed something that was strange in the field. And it was an animal, but it looked real weird. And so he got his gun, he went out, and it looked like a dog, but with a rabbit's head. Which I love both of those things, but together would freak me right out.
Yeah, you have to really, they have to be individualized.
Right.
I don't want a rabbit dog head.
I know, but of course, if someone was like, here's an actual dog with a rabbit head, I'd be like, oh my God, I love you. Come live with us.
It's true.
Suddenly I'm sad that we don't have it. Okay. So this dog, he shot at it because it was freaky and he was, scared of it. And so, but he missed. Guns back then though were kind of meh. And so he was like, all right, maybe I just didn't hit it. So everything was fine. Okay. The thing ran off. He's like, cool. He goes back to his house. And at dinner time, the Bells, they're sitting around and they begin hearing like beating sounds on the outside of their house. So he and the sons ran outside.
Somebody pounding on the door, or
all around the house.
All around the house.
Poppity pop. And so they hustled outside to see what was going on, but they didn't find anything. So the mysterious sounds continued and increased in frequency each night over the next week. And every time, like, he and the boys would hustle outside and there'd be nothing outside. So at some point, whatever was making the sounds made its way inside the house. So the Bell children began waking up frightened, complaining that there were rats gnawing at their bedposts and that they were having a hard time sleeping because of it.
Wait. Rats? Did they see rats?
No.
This is what they thought was
yes,
happening.
they're not seeing any rats.
Okay, but they heard something eating their bed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like that at all.
I know. Okay, so the activity increases. They begin complaining that their blankets are being pulled off them in the night, that their pillows are ending up on the floor. And okay, kids say dumb shit, and so they're kind of like, yeah, okay, cool. But it keeps happening, and okay, so the sounds started to become more discernible too. So in addition to the gnawing sounds, which I think is the weirdest, awfulest thing I can imagine, just like, oh, thank you. No, I'm good. They started to hear the sound of chains being dragged through the house.
Oh, that would be a big no for me.
Yeah.
That will really affect your resale value.
I'm reading this and I'm like, yeah, that's creepy, but also like chains, why? Were you on a boat at some time? Like, is there an anchor somewhere? Where are the chains coming from? Anyway. And also gulping and choking sounds.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Also, right around this time, they begin hearing whispers, but they can't tell what the whispers are saying. It sounds like it's an old lady whispering, kind of like it's kind of
reminds me of your parrot, Lupang. Lupang it's an old bird. Okay, he's been around for a while, and Cat was not the first person to own the bird. So we don't know what he's trying to say or where he learned it, but occasionally he'll just go.
So this is a rescue bird I got when I was 13. He's an African gray parrot, and he is not, like, you know how most African grays you meet or you see in videos on YouTube are, like, smart? No, that's not my Lupang. No, he has a few key things that he says, but mostly it's like shaving cream jingles and like real creepy, like.
I was asleep one night and I heard that. He was going, this is what I heard. Gillette, the best a man can get.
He's a special bird. He's a special bird who actually hates him.
Yeah, he hates him.
This is my favorite story. Okay, tangent. Okay. All right, so we're just starting to like hang out together, and we're sitting on my couch in my living room, which is like kind of in the middle of the room. So the back of the couch is exposed.
She rearranged her living room to resemble the set of Friends.
Yeah.
I don't think you even realized you were doing it.
Yeah,
it's true.
I didn't have a gun through them.
No.
So we're watching, I think, Firefly, and I know, and that's, all of a sudden he just starts screaming because Lupang had made his way out of his room and into the living room, and then up the couch ever so quietly, and then just started attacking the back of his head.
It's true. I had no idea he was even out of his
So
cage.
stealthy.
Oh.
So stealthy.
Stealthy and evil.
Anyway, John Bell's being haunted.
Yeah, back to that.
And so the whispering's happening. It's an old lady voice. Eventually, it starts like singing church hymns, but just real low, like, and creepy. And they were hearing scripture being quoted from inside the walls. Sometimes the family would be having a conversation, and it was almost like the voice would chime in, mocking the family, which they did not care for.
Oh my God.
I know. All right, so the Bell's youngest daughter is Betsy, and she's having the hardest time with this whole situation because the spirit or the entity seems to be focusing on her a lot, including pulling her hair, slapping her, pushing her down the stairs, etc., etc. It's said that there were visible handprints and welts left on her after she dealt with this entity. The disturbances were very upsetting to the whole family, of course, but John Bell was like, let's not tell anyone about this. Because it's fucking weird, right?
Plus
I'm part of the
resale
church. What now?
Plus resale value.
Right, yeah. No, you got to keep that shit in mind.
It's a tough market.
Right. You don't want people to know your house is haunted. You won't be able to sell it, no matter how many big closets you have. So it keeps going on for like a year, and eventually it's escalating to the point where he's like, okay, let's talk to the neighbors and see if the neighbors have had any instances like this, because it's not cool. So he goes to James Johnston, and James is like, bud, I'm here for you. Let's explore this together. So James and his wife come over to the Bell's house to spend the night. They're gonna have a sleepover.
Aww.
and end up having the same terrifying disturbances happen to them. They're getting slapped around. It's rough. And so James reported having his bed covers removed from him repeatedly during the night. And at one point he sprang from the bed exclaiming, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" There was no response, but the remainder of the night was relatively chill. So apparently she didn't know how to her way out of that, and so she's just like,
Oh.
alright, fine.
I don't even care.
Just take my chains and go. Alright, so it's not long before James tells so-and-so and so-and-so tells so-and-so, and people are coming from all over the place to hear the stories and to hopefully witness some of what's going on here. And the voice is now being pretty bold with its threats and its mocking and its... And at one point, one of the people who had come by to check out the sitch was like, "Who are we speaking with?" And there were a couple of identities given, which, do you remember The Exorcist when they're like, "We are Legion"? Anyway, I don't think that was the case in this one, but it's a good movie. So one of the people that was mentioned was Kate Batts. And Kate Batts was a neighbor of John Bell at one point, and apparently they had had some disagreements. And then she kicked it. So people were like, "Oh yeah, it must be that Kate Batts. That's what's going on."
She had the makings of a vengeful spirit.
Well, there's not a lot of information about her, but in my head, what had happened was.
There we go.
So Kate Batts was a single woman living out on the prairie, doing her thing. She had some people working for her. She had some means, and I think that naturally people suspected her of being something because she was a lady person who.
What do you mean, something?
Like witchery or something of that nature.
I thought you were implying prostitution.
Oh.
No. Okay.
I'm pro sex work.
Yeah, she's pro. The guy over there. Yeah.
All right. Some sources said that Kate was mad because of a specific instance where they apparently had purchased a person together. It was a slave person, and they were going to share him. And it seems like a horrible idea. And that went badly. So that's why they were like, all right, this must be old Kate. So over time, it seemed that Kate had one main reason to visit the Bell home, and that was to kill John Bell. Well done. I love you guys. So also, Betsy got a little bit older, and she's kind of hanging out with this guy named Joshua, and Kate Bell didn't want Betsy hanging out with Joshua. I don't see how that plays into this, but it was a part of the story. I'm gonna skip it. So
I love it when you edit on the fly.
thanks. So there were those who were skeptical of this whole situation. John Johnston, who was the son of James Johnston, the sleepover guy, he devised a test for the witch, which, this is my kind of guy, I love it. He shows up and he's like, "I've got this idea, we're gonna ask the Bell Witch something that no one outside of our family will know." And since he's coming in from the outside, all right, so he asked the entity what his Dutch step-grandmother in North Carolina would say to the slaves if she thought that they had done something wrong. And so there was a silence, and John's all like,
Smug.
I'm assuming this is not
smug.
written down anywhere, but I picture him being like, right? And then all of a sudden, the witch in his grandmother's accent says, "Hut tut tut, what has happened now?" Which is apparently what she said, and now what I'm going to use anytime someone does something that displeases me. Did you wash my sweater? Hut, tut, tut.
Apparently you don't wash sweaters in the washing machine. I've learned
Well,
that.
some can. Listen.
None of yours. Your 85 gray sweaters that you wear.
Why do you keep bringing that up like it's a weird thing? People like sweaters. It's the reason that they're a thing. So, in another account, an Englishman stopped by and he offered to investigate. And he had remarked while in the house about his family overseas. And so the witch suddenly began to mimic his English parents. And very early in the morning, the witch woke him to voices of his parents, worried because they had heard his voice as well. So he was like, I'm out of here immediately. This is ridiculous. So he left and then later wrote to the bells. In my head, they never spoke again, but he did write them a letter. And he wrote to them and said that his parents he contacted them and that his parents did hear his voice at the same time that this whole thing was going on. So he apologized for his skepticism and went on his merry way. The entity was well acquainted with biblical text and appeared to enjoy religious arguments. As another form of amusement, she would gossip about things that were going into other people's households,
Wow.
which is like so bitchy. You know, why? How does that concern you?
Yeah. I
It
get
don't.
that at all.
It don't. Yeah, right? All right. So there's a whole sub thing about this story that involves Andrew Jackson, which there are debates about whether this part of the story, there's debates about whether the whole thing is true, but there are debates about whether this part of the story is true. Andrew Jackson was spending a lot of time in Nashville at this time, so he wanted to check out the Bell House. And, okay, so the story goes that he and his men pulled up onto the Bell property, and the horse like freaked out and wouldn't go any further. And Andrew Jackson's like, listen, horses do what I tell them to, so I don't know what's going on here, but you need to go. And so eventually they just kind of left the wagon, and like all the dudes went into the house. But the dudes at this point were like, we don't want to be a part of this. Thank you very much. So they all slept outside. And
That's a good call. That is a good call.
yeah, I thought so. But suddenly they're having a fire outside, and someone yelled, this weird feeling, this thing with the horses, this must be the work of the Bell Witch. And then all of a sudden they heard laughing coming from the trees, and the Bell Witch said, you can proceed now. So apparently she was just fucking with him. And so he was like, okay, cool. So they tootled their cart up to the house. One of the dudes claimed to be a witch tamer, which I don't think is a thing. And
I want to get business cards that just say that. Witch tamer.
JG,
Witch tamer.
What would that, I mean, I think that would reflect poorly upon me, though.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
people would assume that
Yeah.
we don't need that.
I just like saying the words witch tamer.
No, it's fun.
It is
It's
fun.
fun. I wish I had, like, a hardcore band. Sometimes I think about things like Witch Tamer would be a great name for a hardcore song.
Yeah.
Just like a real, 90-second song. See, that would work, too. that would work,
Hey, don't make us get the spray bottle out.
That's it. That's right. That's right. So after he called himself a witch tamer and pulled out a shiny pistol, proclaiming that his gun would kill any evil spirit that came in contact with him, he was scared out of his wits by having his body jerked off the cart and landing onto the ground. And he said that he felt like pins were being stuck into him. So apparently don't call yourself a witch tamer, because they won't like that.
He wasn't a very good witch tamer, was he?
No. So then they're all terrified, and they sleep outside. And then the next day, it was reported that they made their way onto Nashville. They had had enough of this business. Where's the rest of my story? All right.
I printed out everything you sent. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so It's like December, and John Bell ends up dealing with these respiratory things, and it's increased over a year or so. And so he eventually is like, that witch has got me. And he dies. And so the family's all like, it's the witch, and they heard laughter. Was, when they discovered the body, they heard laughter coming from the walls, and there was a bottle of something in the cupboard that no one recognized. So one of the sons gave a little bit of it to the cat, which...
What? Oh. I don't understand this. Okay, so something appears in the cupboard in a bottle. I have no idea what it is. And the first thing they say is,
let's give it to the cat.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, so the cat dies. I know. So they're like, okay, well, they throw it into the fire, and reportedly it, this big blue flame thing, and it shoots up the chimney. It's a whole thing. So they bury John Bell. They take him to the cemetery, and he was well liked in that town, and so it was a big turnout. Everyone's there, and they're putting him in the ground in a coffin.
Oh, good.
It was, yep. And all of a sudden they hear laughing coming from the woods. And no one can really identify exactly where it's coming from. But everyone's kind of like, okay, we kind of knew that, this is a little overkill, right? And then the voice, the entity, starts singing drinking songs.
99 bottles of beer on the wall?
Yeah, I don't know what was trendy at the time, but I assume yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it wouldn't stop until every last person had left the graveyard. And that was her final appearance, was just she had killed John Bell, and that was what she had come to do, and tut tut tut.
Tut tut.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Now, let's discuss this part. Where did I put it? Okay. So, this story comes mostly from a book called The Authenticated History of the Bell Witch, which was published in 1894 by Martin Van Buren Ingram, who also owned a local newspaper. Now, he claims that he got these stories of these instances from one of the Bell Boys' diaries. But that diary never showed up. And so he's selling newspapers and writing stories and all the other information that comes from this story comes from that initial publication, which I think is very interesting.
Hokey, you think?
Which is why the Andrew Jackson thing especially makes me go, Anyway.
That's interesting.
She sang drinking songs at his funeral.
So she wasn't all bad.
Well, you don't know. It could have been really bad.
It could have been bad drinking songs. Well, there's something redeeming in everyone, even the Bell Witch.
That's true.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Oh man, that's fascinating.
Anyway, that's what I have about the Bell Witch.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that.
Oh, there's a cave in Adams where apparently the Bell Witch went to live after. But again, there was only one story that related to the cave, so I wanted to know more about that cave, but there's no more about that cave.
That's it. That's all there is.
Yeah.
We there is it. Where is it?
Oh yeah, your bag.
Yep.
So a while ago, I don't know, this whole time guys. And so, like that was a whole sentence. Time guys.
It's the spray bottle of shame.
And we're all so good.
Very well behaved freaks.
I don't trust that at all. So we did ask for questions. If anyone had questions, to email them to us, and we would try to take a couple of them. So we did select a few that we thought would be fun. And this one is really just an opportunity for me to talk about the dogs. Did you bring the pugs to Nashville? That's from Rebecca J5. No.
Is that her family name, you think?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, with the little at symbol.
Yeah.
No, we did not bring the pugs to Nashville. They have those flat faces, so they don't fly so good.
Yeah. Banjo wanted to come, but Willie demanded first class, and he wouldn't do it, so come on.
William J. Bottomtooth.
That's what we call him. He smiles like this.
Okay, question 2. This one made me laugh. How come Jethro is so much older than Kat? Well, honey, because he was born first.
Yeah, that's how it works.
It's not the first time we had that question. I like you.
I like you too.
All right.
Hey, love is love, right? Yeah.
I'm just picturing the person writing it like, how come?
Explain yourself.
But why? Well. Okay, yes, and what would you say is what would each of you say is the other one's weird talent?
Okay.
From I Love Lamp.
I think this is the initial thing that drew me to Kat was she knows all the words to every Salt and Pepper song that was ever recorded. Well, almost. And every night, as we're getting ready for bed, she serenades me with "What a Man."
It's not even every night.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So I think you should do it a little.
Please.
All right. So maybe you guys can kind of help clap along.
Oh no, you're serious.
Yeah, I'm serious. Yep. You can do this.
Oh no.
What a man!
You got this, Kat.
You got it.
Okay.
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty big man. Mighty. Come on, let's go. What a man, what a man, what a man.
I want to take a minute or two and give much respect to the man who's made a difference in my world. And although most men are hoes, it goes on the down low because I never heard about him with another girl. But I don't sweat it because it's just pathetic to let it get me involved in that he said, she said crap. I know that ain't nobody perfect. I give props to those who deserve it. And believe me, y'all, he's worth it.
Nailed it.
We're fighting.
I'll be sleeping with a spray bottle.
Okay, your weird talent.
Yeah, what is wrong?
You have a lot of weird talents. He has like yo-yo championship patches. So that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
We have them framed. It's a thing. He's really good at yo-yoing.
Was the master at one point.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was.
Yeah. No, it was back when they first invented yo-yos.
Oh, okay. No, I don't know. Your Echo Man blows my mind.
My superpower.
Your superpower. Yeah. He has this thing that he can do is you can say things and he'll just say them back to you, like while you're saying more things.
Yeah. It's great.
I did not explain that well.
Yeah. It's great when we argue though.
It is freaky though, and let's do it. Okay.
Yes.
I did my thing.
All right.
Okay.
Let's get something from the audience.
Okay, yeah. We don't want to hear about the Bell Witch again.
There's a menu right there. Give us a menu if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Have to concentrate. Okay, here we go. You can do it.
It's my butt. Okay. I'm nervous. Okay. Mac and cheese wedges. Battered and fried American. No, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to start again. Okay. I'm the one that's nervous. Okay. Mac and cheese wedges, battered and fried American favorites, served with marinara sauce, pretzel bites, baked mini soft pretzel bites.
Thank you.
He's wearing a Box of Oddities shirt.
Nice. I admire your taste in shirtwear. Very nice. Very nice. Well, did you have fun tonight? Everybody have fun? It means so much to us that you guys came out for this. This is the very first time we've tried this, and you've made us feel like we're just in our living room, you know, which is really, it's great. You guys are fantastic. We love you. We really do.
Thank you. We appreciate it so much, and it's the outpouring of love and sweetness, and and the cupcakes.
Yeah, cupcakes.
Which is really nice. And yeah, so I'm having feelings.
Yeah, too many feelings. So
That's good.
Hopefully, we'll maybe do some more shows, and if you're in the area, we would love to see you all again.
Oh, also, we've been seriously considering the idea of a freak cruise.
Yeah.
So I think that would be amazing. We can like shuffleboard together.
Oh yeah.
Is that how you shuffle?
Somebody actually a cruise specialist contacted us because we had mentioned it on.
I like to think I'm a cruise specialist.
Well, you are that. She recommended a cruise through the Bermuda Triangle. That would be cool.
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea very much.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you at another show.
Until then, keep flying that freak flag.
Fly, you beautiful freaks.